DC to the Philippines.
Stop the U.S. war machine.
From DC to the Philippines.
Stop the U.S. war machine.
I said from DC to the Philippines.
Stop the U.S. war machine.
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU.
I said you protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU.
Hell yeah, give it up on top of yourselves. We got some new chants for you today. It's easy. It's a really easy cadence. You just repeat after me. The system is working. It is not broken.
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 The only solution is abolition.
The only solution is abolition.
Death to capitalism.
Death to capitalism.
Death to capitalism.
Death to capitalism.
Death to white supremacy.
Death to white supremacy.
Death to white supremacy.
Death to white supremacy.
Build strong communities.
Build strong communities.
Build strong communities.
Build strong communities.
Build the world we want to see.
Build the world we want to see.
Stand in solidarity.
Stand in solidarity.
Abolition means creation.
Abolition means creation.
Stop Asian hate means black liberation.
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 Stop Asian hate means free Palestine.
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 Stop Asian hate means Viva Colombia.
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 The system is working. It is not broken.
The system is working. It is not broken.
The only solution is abolition.
The only solution is abolition.
Death to capitalism.
Death to capitalism.
Death to white supremacy.
Death to white supremacy.
Build strong communities.
Build strong communities.
Build the world we want to see.
Build the world we want to see.
Stand in solidarity.
Stand in solidarity.
Abolition means creation.
Abolition means creation.
Stop Asian hate means black liberation.
Stop Asian hate means black liberation.
Give it up one time for yourselves. So I'm gonna be real with you. Can I be real with you? Say yes, comrade.
Yes.
Ooh, that was a little more sexual though. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna be real with you. We were gonna march today, but unfortunately because one, it's hot, and two, our comrades all over the world are continuing their fights for liberation. We don't have the turnout that we want, so we're gonna hold space. I'm very grateful to each and every single one of you for being here today to hold space. It means a lot. To be here right now in this space means that you reject the systems of oppression that are driving apart Black, brown, and indigenous communities. I want you to remember when you go home today, or go out to get drinks now that bars are up, that this Asian hate crime bill, or whatever the hell, will do nothing for our communities. It will do nothing for Asian people. It will do nothing to Black people that are also victims of so-called hate crimes. It will not keep us safe by expanding the powers of law enforcement. So my question to you is, what do we do now that it is here? This bill is here to stay. We have to be pragmatic about this, as upset as we are. So when you go home, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, watch your local governments. If If you live in DC, watch your ward. Watch what your council members at large are doing. If you live in Virginia, look at your city governments. Because this bill has to be implemented on a local level. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. And that means, as we go home to our own communities, we have to fight this bill every time it is attempted to be implemented. Oh, yeah, hell yeah. Because the Asian hate crimes bill does nothing to stop Asian hate. I know at this point I'm beating a dead horse, but I want to beat it into all of us today. Hey, yeah, clap for that shit. Hell yeah. Thank you, comrade. At this time, I'd like to offer this space to anybody that wants to speak on their experience as a person of color in this country. Whether you're Asian, during Asian History Month right now, whether you're black, where you're, I don't have to tell you about your experience, never mind. No matter what your identity is, some white people, y'all can hang up for a second. If you want to talk about your experience and how you have been affected in recent history as liberation movements have continued to develop around the world, I'd like to offer this space to you right now.
Years ago, in 2004, the government took my mother. They didn't call us to let us know that they had her. They wouldn't allow her to call us. They let her get to a temperature of 106 degrees. When I got to the hospital, they told me my mother might not make it. I'm trying to get my mother back. This book right here, When They Come For You, by David Curry. They talk about state-sanctioned kidnappings. The government is allowed to kidnap people out of their houses. In this book, they say that they take children from their parents and put them up for adoption, and some of these parents never see their children again. Can somebody please help me get my mother back? My mother's going to turn 83 years old August the 20th of this year, and I'm trying to get my mother back. The government took my mother 17 years ago in 2004, and I'm trying to get her back. Can someone please help me? For one thing, can someone please help me get in contact with Edward Snowden? For one thing. Can someone please help me get in contact with Edward Snowden? Can someone please help me get in contact with his friend, Robert Tebow? Edward Snowden says that Robert, what's that say? Robert, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get in contact with Edward Snowden's friend, Robert Tebow. Edward Snowden describes him as a tireless champion of lost causes. I have a lost cause. I have to get my mother back. Please help me get into contact with Edward Snowden or his attorney friend, Robert Tebow, T-I-B-B-O. Please, I need some help. I got my passport in 2007 to go to college in Canada. But I can't. My life is in limbo because I have to get my mother back. It was always the plan that I go to college so of course I can take care of myself and take care of my mother in her old age. But I can't. How can I concentrate in college when they got my mother? I want to go to school. I'm homeless. But no one from my family is homeless. But I had to go home. I didn't have any choice. I did 10 years of research, 15 years of research, trying to find out how can the government just take somebody out there? How
someone give these? We have another speech. Everybody give it up.
So, as someone who's been in this movement for a little while, I started last year in June when more than 200 protesters were beaten in the streets, tear gassed, flashbangs, and pepper sprayed. This included children. And we were peaceful protesters, but it doesn't fucking matter if you're peaceful or not, because they're gonna treat you like shit either way. So when I say fuck 12, I mean fuck 12. I mean you, I mean you, I mean fuck and when I say all culture bastards, I mean every single one, including your bastard relatives. We're fucking fighting for our justice. We're fucking fighting for everybody's justice. That includes Asian people. That includes Colombia, and includes Palestine, because we're not free until we're all fucking free. I got a lot of anger when it comes to shit like this, because look at the shit that we fucking see every fucking day. Every fucking day there's a death. More than 70 children were killed in Palestine. And as someone who's black that deals with seeing black children die all the time, that shit hurts. And it's not fucking fair. So when I see you guys come out to these fucking actions and you're chanting, I need to hear your chant. I need to hear your anger. I need to hear your sadness. I need to hear that you care about it. I need to hear that you give a shit. So when I say fuck 12, I need you to scream that shit. Fuck 12. Fuck 12. Her.
Alright, y'all. So I want to take a pause here to honor the memory and pain of some of our brothers, sisters, and siblings who have been killed or harmed by white supremacist violence. But as much as it's important for us to remember the victims of the shooting in Atlanta in March, and to call attention to the countless Asian and Asian American individuals who have experienced assault and harassment in the past year, I want us to also think about what we're fighting for and how we're fighting for that. I want us to think about whether increasing policing in our communities is really going to keep us safe. Because when Asian people are victims of state-sanctioned violence at the hands of the police, we need to be remembering them too. And if we say that we want to try to stop Asian hate by bringing more police into our communities, we are disrespecting their memory. So I want to read some names of Asian people who have been killed or harmed by the police. Content warning for police violence. Fong Lee, a 19-year-old Hmong American shot 8 times by Minneapolis police. Tommy Lay, a 20-year-old Vietnamese American shot by a county sheriff's deputy in Seattle. Christian Hall, a 19-year-old Chinese adoptee shot by Pennsylvania State Police. Yang Song, a massage parlor worker in Queens, New York, who had previously been sexually assaulted while in police custody, killed during a police raid on her workplace. Angelo Quinto, a Filipino-American man in Antioch, California, killed by police who knelt on his neck for 5 minutes. Li Shi Wang, a Chinese man shot by Chino, California police while hiding during a raid on his home. Barry Pratt, a Cambodian anti-police brutality activist, shot and killed by police in Long Beach, California. Silason Akavan, a Laotian refugee experiencing a mental health emergency, shot and killed by SWAT in Charlotte. Bubu Pontvan, a 19-month-old toddler who was injured when police threw a flashbang into his playpen during a no-knock warrant in Georgia. And now I want to turn our attention to our own local community here in DC. When we give more funding to something like the Asian Liaison Unit, when we give more funding to MPD, these are the folks in our community who suffer the consequences. Yes, Asians are victimized by state violence too, and it's important to name that. But I want us to remember that it is our Black neighbors who bear the brunt of violence at the hands of the police. So I'm going to read the names of some of the Black folks killed by MPD in recent history, and I'm going to include the names of the killer cops responsible for these deaths as well, because many of these pigs are still employed by MPD. Terrence Sterling, killed at 31 years old by MPD officer Brian Traynor in September 2016. Daquan Young, killed at 24 years old by off-duty MPD officer James Wilson in May 2018.
Speak up!
Marquise Alston, killed at 22 years old by MPD officers Caleb Demerit and Ronald Koch in May 2018. Dion Kay, killed at 18 years old by MPD officer Alexander Alvarez in September 2020. Karan Hilton Brown, killed at 20 years old by MPD officer Terrence Sutton in October 2020. Terrence Parker, killed at 36 years old by MPD officer Howard Lee in April 2021. Now I want us to take a moment of silence for our community members in DC and across the country who have lost their lives to white supremacists and state-sanctioned violence. And if you're Asian and you live in the DMV and you haven't heard these names before, I challenge you to show up for your Black neighbors just like you show up when something happens that affects the Asian community. Solidarity doesn't mean just saying solidarity. Solidarity means show up, stand up, fight back for our collective liberation. Thank you. Okay, I'm also the person who gives you speakers, so now I'm going to bring up Crash. You're ready? Woo. Give it up for Crash, everyone. All right, give it up for Crash. Can y'all hear me? Hey, so this is my first time holding one of these. All right. My name is Crash, and like my comrade just said, solidarity is more than just saying things. It's actually like love and act, and it's showing up. It's continuing to come out for the people that you said that you're in community with. We're here today as communities who've experienced a lot of loss. Huh? Can y'all hear me? Yes. All right, is it better now? I'm sorry, I really hate my voice. Okay. We're here today as communities who've experienced a lot of loss. Not only within the last year, but for decades. We've been targeted and mistreated by a society that thrives on our contributions. Our communities have also been tricked into thinking our differences outweigh the reasons we should come together. As if our problems are so uncommon that we cannot support each other in the journey to liberation. Of course, this is false. Historically, our communities have backed each other's efforts to demand more from the world that we live in. In response to tragedies we face, in true fashion, this country has had to use legislation in pointless attempts to combat the violent, racist, and murderous tendencies that are embedded in the fibers of the state.
legislation that would have not have saved any of the people we're out here to honor today. These people did not sacrifice themselves. They did not choose to die. They were executed by white supremacists in a country that birthed and bred their murderers. Hashtags became headstones and support for our communities became a trend. We don't have the luxury to stop caring because the fighting for our existence is no longer popular. Nor can we stop showing up for each other because it's no longer convenient. The idea that oppressed communities cannot show solidarity is rooted in capitalism and only benefits white supremacy.
Could you speak up, please?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I swear I'm loud. I promise. Okay. All right. So, how can we show up for each other? We listen, we learn, and we share our stories. We must task ourselves to better understand our experiences and perspectives. Get to know our cultures beyond the stereotypes and our tragedies, but learn our joys and traditions as well. We must also confront our communities about prejudices that aid in harmful actions taken upon each other. We have to urge them to not become complacent and settle for the insignificant gestures that this country will offer. Naming bills behind the murders of people is not the same as justice, as death cannot be restored. White supremacy, capitalism, homophobia, and transphobia all must be dismantled, and we cannot do that alone. Organizing together is not an option. Organizing together is not an option, but a necessity. We gain nothing from being divided, but together we can destroy the forces that fear our unity and create the world we wish to see.
Give it up one more time for Crash. All right, just to take a quick breather, how's everyone feeling? Are you as hot as I am right now?
There's cold drinks in the cooler.
There's cold drinks in the cooler right here. We also have medics who are going around with those little fans that have the water spraying thing on them, so please take them up on that. Stay hydrated. And without further ado, I'm going to bring up our next speaker, Art from Anik Bayan, DC.
All right, good afternoon. Wait, can y'all hear me in the back?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. But good afternoon and salutations, my siblings in the struggle. I'm Art of Anik Bayan, DC, a grassroots anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist organization of Filipinx youth fighting and organizing for human rights and national democracy in the Philippines. Now today, we're here to continue the momentum towards combating the recent and increasing violence against the Asian American community, celebrate API Heritage Month, and be in solidarity with other communities that are impacted by white supremacy and state violence. Now, we've had a lot of momentum in the street this past year, from the black uprisings of 2020 to the more recent protests to free Palestine from Zionist occupation and violence. But in light of the tragedy of the Atlanta 8 and so many attacks on Asian Americans across the country, I've seen an increasing amount of Asian American youth that are organizing and mobilizing than I've ever seen before. And I hope we can have some of those folks join some of the organizations here today and keep that momentum going. But let's remember why we're here today. We are here today in solidarity and calling for the abolition of police units that target our communities, like MPD's Asian Liaison Unit. It doesn't matter if these cops look like us or if they speak like us, because they're not going to protect us. And oftentimes they only hurt the most vulnerable among us. Because when it comes to the cops, the best you get is a statement. Normally you just suffer, and at worst you die. Because, just look at the case of the Atlanta 8s. The cops came late, they gave no aid to the dying, and they just gave a statement. But when you look at other cases, like last year when a Filipino man named Angelo Quinto was suffering from a mental health crisis and was murdered
by a police officer kneeling on his neck for 5 minutes. Now that execution was very similar to the way George Floyd was executed, whose death anniversary is coming up in a few days. And the thing is, when it comes to police killings, there's so many deaths and so many names, and we don't even hear about all of them when they come out. Like I just learned today about Christian Hall, an Asian teen shot by police during a mental health crisis. It's horrible. But we know from history and from experience that a cop is nothing more than a pig with a badge. Whether they're abroad or here, PNP or NPD, they're not looking out for you or me.
Hey.
It don't matter.
Hey, say it again.
All right. That's the thing. A cop is nothing more than a pig with a badge. Abroad or here, PNP or MPD, they don't care about you or me. And that's the thing. With the abolition of the ALU, we demand the reallocation of those funds to education, housing, transportation, other services that people actually need, instead of wasting $3.4 million on some cops in the middle of a motherfucking pandemic.
Hey.
But that's why we organize with all of our communities, because we keep us safe and not these violent policies and institutions. Now, we also call for the abolition of ICE. According to the Center for Migration Studies, over 1.7 million Asians and Pacific Islanders are undocumented in the U.S. That makes 1 out of every 7 of those immigrant communities living in constant fear of deportation. API folks make up the fastest growing undocumented group and the majority of immigrants who stay past their visa's expiration date since 2010. And under the Trump administration, deportation rates increased by 240% for the Vietnamese and Cambodian communities, with Southeast Asians and Pacific Islanders still suffering from high rates of deportation. But so, it might be hot outside, but it's still fuck ice. Every day. All of them. But not only fuck ICE, but it's fuck U.S. imperialism. Because we're calling for an end to them. This wave of recognized violence against our communities isn't something new, because it precedes the pandemic. We know that U.S. imperialism inflicts its violence with its militaries, economic policies, and influence, with countless wars and battles abroad that cause death and displacement, to occupations that cause more sufferings and deaths, like the murder of Jennifer Laude, a trans Filipino woman at the hands of U.S. soldier Scott Pemberton. These economic policies that force our people to leave our homelands in search for economic opportunities in the lands of the governments that displaced us.
Empire right there.
To the imperialist influence that causes anti-Asian sentiments that encourages violence in our communities like in Atlanta and places all across the country. U.S. imperialism has got to go. But let's not forget that we come from a rich history of Asian and Pacific Islanders in the U.S., living and organizing. Like, we're not invisible. I mean, maybe from the white perspective, perhaps. We've been here for centuries holding it down regardless. And for as long as we've been here, we have survived and lived with our allied communities by our sides, united in solidarity. Stretching back to when Filipinos escaped from the Spanish with the help of Black Americans to settle in the Louisiana-based settlement in St. Malo, to forming coalitions of oppressed peoples like in the Third World Liberation Front, the Rainbow Coalition, the Third World Women's Alliance, all of these orgs preceding Black orgs, or orgs like the International League of People Strugglers that organize across multiple communities as a unified front.
Hey.
What I'm saying is we work together, not out of you scratch my back, I scratch your back, tit for tat solidarity. Because it's deeper than that. It shouldn't work like that. The systems that oppress us are so intricately intertwined that you will never truly be free, simply if you solely desire only one to fall, because they're all linked together and support each other as multiple heads of one beast. See, you cannot end racism without ending imperialism. You cannot end imperialism without ending Zionism. You cannot end Zionism without ending capitalism. You cannot end capitalism without ending homophobia and sexism and so on and so forth. Just officially knock one down, you must knock them all down. So that's why
we must build the broadest front possible to accomplish this massive endeavor. Because your liberation is my liberation.
Hey.
For there to truly be Asian liberation, we must have black liberation and the liberation of colonized peoples all over this world. Though we don't do this just out of the need to liberate ourselves, but out of the love and desire to liberate all of our people. So now as we continue to struggle, where we are struggling for the liberation of all our people, I pray that we see liberation in our lifetimes. Thank you.
All right, now we're gonna bring up Lucy. Give her a round of applause.
Solidarity, girl, yes.
Hi everybody, I'm Lucy. I'm grateful to be here today with each and every one of you. We are here today for the same fight, the same purpose. Truth be told, when I was asked to speak, I really didn't know what to say because all I've been able to do is feel. Feel the pain, the hurt, the anger, the sadness, the grief, and every emotion in between as we continue to see our own people and the people we stand in solidarity with get taken away in the hands of white supremacy, police brutality, racism, and oppression. As the first Jenn, I know the battles and struggles our parents have to fight through in order to provide and pave the way for me to be able to have a better life here. The reason why we're here today, the injustice occurring over the generations and years, the racial violence being brushed under the rug, is not the better life. I shouldn't have to live fearing for my family or friends' lives or feeling paranoid in environments that are supposed to have us feeling safe. I shouldn't have to fear the people that are allegedly here to serve and protect. I shouldn't receive hate based on how the government turns communities against each other. I will not be your pawn in your race war. I will not be your model minority. I will not be silent. I will continue to stand in solidarity with the Black community as we are on the same side of the fight and we are not each other's enemies. We must continue to make our voices heard and shake every single table across the world. We must not back down and surrender to the agenda of our oppressor. And until Black people are free, nobody is free. Again, until Black people are free, nobody is free. Together, we are more intelligent. We are more powerful. The government is for the people and we are the people. The government is for the people and we the people are the reason for those in the positions they are in. So as the people, we can take those positions away. I'm here to encourage you to break those generational curses, to fight for justice, to deprogram yourself from what you were taught, to have those uncomfortable conversations, to understand our differences are more similar than we choose to see. Thank you, everybody.
All right, y'all, now to close it out, I'm going to bring up our lovely comrade colleague from the Total Liberation Collective. Give it up.
Hello, everyone. Happy AAPI month. Thank you all so much for coming out today. It really is beautiful to see all of us standing in solidarity amongst our Black and Asian comrades as we all fight for our liberations collectively. We're also here to stand in solidarity with our comrades from around the world as we all fight against state oppressive systems of policing, carceral systems, militarization, and forms of violence that reinforce oppression and white supremacy. I'm specifically here today to address rampant racism, microaggressions, homophobia, transphobia, misogynoir, colorism, and anti-blackness within our own Asian communities. My fellow Asian comrades, we have to do better. We have to educate ourselves and our communities more. We have to check our implicit biases. We have to listen to our fellow Black comrades, especially our fellow Black femme comrades. Because our liberation cannot and absolutely will not happen unless we all collectively fight for Black liberation together. But we have to do better. We cannot adhere to the racist beliefs indoctrinated by things like the model minority myth or the newly passed anti-Asian hate crime bill that only polices our communities more and divides us more. We are powerful together when we fight to dismantle white supremacy together. And we're here because of Black revolutionaries. We have the Black-led civil rights movement that to thank for the reversal of racist immigration policies from the 1920s that many of our families benefited from. The dismantling of global anti-Black racism and the struggles against colonialism and empire, not to mention oppressive structures of class and gender, require a concerted effort and cannot be achieved without our collective efforts to address anti-Blackness within our own communities. Check your racist family members. Check your neoliberal friend who posted that Black square on Instagram last summer but hasn't supported Black lives too. Check your spouse. When was the last time you had a negative thought about or disregarded someone who has a darker skin color than you? When was the last time your friend, your family member, made a racist, ignorant, microaggressive comment and you stood silent? We heard the saying, silence is violence, right? How are you taking care of your Black friends? How are you protecting them? How are you supporting them? We all have to unlearn how white supremacy has divided us. We have to transform ourselves first. We are all deeply entangled in the very systems we are attempting to organize right now, to change right now. I'm here with Total Liberation Collective, TLC. TLC is a local abolitionist organization that believes, as stated by Mariam Kaba, that abolition is a vision of a structured society in a world where we have everything we need: food, shelter, education, health, art, beauty, clean water, and more things that are foundational to our personal and community safety. Because we keep us safe, right? And one way we keep us safe is mutual aid. Mutual aid is a form of solidarity-based support in which communities unite against a common struggle. Rather than leaving individuals behind to fend for themselves, mutual aid marries community service and political education and is the act of directly working to meet people's needs with the shared understanding that the current systems we live in do not meet our needs and that we can meet them together right now.
What'd you do this morning? What'd you do this morning?
I'll get to that in a minute. Some ways TLC embodies this is through our current mutual aid project. We provide a weekly Saturday meal and supplies distribution to different encampments around the city where we personally cook and distribute 100 meals every Saturday. Every month, we host mutual aid markets in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods, providing groceries, clothing, and household supplies. We actively work with single Black and brown mothers in the DMV by redistributing wealth, and especially checking with them on holidays to make sure them and their children's needs are met. But we all can't just be about talk. We have to be about it. Now raise your hand if you knew what mutual aid was before today.
All right. Gang.
Now keep your hands up if you've actively participated in a mutual aid program in the last 2 weeks. Look around you. See how many Black men's hands are up? Look how most of the labor falls on their shoulders. TLC is out here every day doing kinds of direct actions to support and protect our communities. But it's not just TLC, it's orgs like Good Trouble, Until Freedom, Remoria's House, DC Freedom Collective, so many different orgs that are out here doing this work every day. And it's not just about marches and protests and big presentations. We have the ability to make real change in people's lives right now. Meeting the material needs of people, community with people, protecting each other. And just like Comrade Angela Davis said, we have to act as if it was possible to radically transform the world. And you have to do it all the time. So if you're interested in getting involved in organizing and actively doing the work, look around you and speak to someone in a Total Liberation Collective shirt. But actually, I want you all to pull out your phones. Like, pull out your phones, open Instagram, and follow at TL Collective DC, our new Instagram page. The state likes to suppress our voices. So search at TL Collective DC. Fill out the volunteer form in our link tree. Find ways to support your local mutual aid organization. This work is every day, non-stop. Support the ones that are actively doing the work. Thanks, y'all. To liberation, we fucking go.
If you've learned something new today, make some noise. At today's rally today, we've learned a lot about what Stop Asian Hate means. I'm going to say Stop Asian Hate means, and you are going to yell something that Stop Asian Hate means. Y'all ready? Maybe not. Y'all ready? Yeah! Woo! Stop Asian Hate means... I heard kill your local racist, and I just want to say that Total Liberation does not condone that. Stop Asian Hate means...
Disband the ALU!
Hell yeah. Stop Asian Hate means free Palestine. I'd like to welcome our comrades from the Levant up to speak right now.
My voice is gone from like the recent protests, so I'm gonna try and be as articulate as possible. First things first, I want everybody to remember that Black Lives Matter, Palestine, Stop Asian Hate, it all stems from one place again, and that is white supremacy. And that is again the privilege of people who again do not understand what it is like to live in fear every single day, who do not understand what being censored is like, or being doxxed because you're talking about a certain cause, or to have military occupation, which again the police is exactly that, MPD is exactly that. And I want people again to remember that as a Palestinian, I acknowledge the anti-blackness of my communities. I acknowledge that there is colorism. We need to have these conversations even in the midst of us being bombed, even in the midst of us going through what we're going through, because now is the time. Now is the time to have these conversations. Right now in Gaza there's a ceasefire. But if anyone has kept up with what's going on in Al-Aqsa or Sheikh Jarrah, people are still being displaced, forced out of their homes. If you watch the videos, you watch the way that the IOF uses tactics such as stop and frisk that you see here in the police department. They put you at checkpoints. They ask you to pull out your ID. They question you for hours. They treat you like you don't belong here, like this land is not your land, when again, settler colonialism never belonged to them, the indigenous people. Every single one of you needs to remember that again, without each other here, there is no liberation. Coming out again to these workshops, rallies, protests, marches, that again is what you need to do. but you also need to remember what happens behind the scenes. What groups are you joining? What organizations are you joining? What grassroots are you joining? What are you doing behind the scenes? Because I've noticed that a lot of people back on my social media feed, back to posting about, I don't know, the next artist, or and pictures of them out having fun. You see the similarities between exactly what happened with Black Lives Matter. Every single time a black man, woman, or child is killed, you see outrage on social media dies down within 2 to 3 weeks. The only people talking about it, again, are black women, black men, black children, and sometimes as well the oppressed. And that needs to change. Call out your friends, call out your coworkers, call out your family, call out every single person that's walking down the damn street that again is so privileged that they don't give a fuck about somebody that doesn't look like that. And again, the oppressed don't look like each other, but we endure the same fucking occupation, oppression, from Ferguson to Palestine, from Baltimore to Palestine, from DC to Palestine, from Philippines to Palestine, from Iraq to Palestine, from Syria to Palestine, from Yemen to Palestine. It is endless. It is endless. This list is endless. And it again stems from white supremacy, settler
colonialism. It stems from, again, people who cannot understand what we endure. They are so privileged to be sitting at these side streets,
drinking their Starbucks, enjoying their lives, when again, as a Palestinian, I can't say shit without risking, again, a PhD program I want to apply to, a medical residency I want to apply to. I have to risk being put on Canary mission, which will come up as me being a terrorist for standing up for land that belongs to me, for a land that has been occupied for 73 years, for 750,000 Palestinians who have been exiled, for the people of my country who are being ethnically cleansed, for again, the people who are being displaced and not evicted, they are being forced. They are being, again, put in a situation. Where the fuck do they go? And they tell you, go back to your Arab countries. Go to the surrounding 22 countries. You bomb the fuck out of them too. You bomb the fuck out of them too. Where do we go? Where do we go? They tell you to go back to your country. That's not your fucking country. This isn't the white man's country. We all know that. We all know that. They invade Vietnam. They go to Japan. They drop bombs on countries. And again, we have to stay silent. Why? Because we want to be able to get into programs or education systems, and we want to make a difference. But at this point in time, we can't stay silent anymore. Silence is violence. Silence is violence. Silence is violence. And tell your white privileged friends to come the fuck out. To call out their fucking families. Because again, the older generation is not going to do that. They're too afraid. I know for a fact that my ancestors, that my family members who are a lot older than me are so fucking scared of me even coming out here. They tell me, don't cry in front of cameras. They tell me to not be angry. They tell me that again, I need to hold my emotions and have them under control. And it's the same way that black Americans are policed. Black men are treated like they are the angriest men in the entire country. Black women are referred to as vulgar or angry, or that none of the oppressed have the right to be angry, as settler colonialism, and occupation, and police in every fucking corner of our streets. The United States funds over $3.8 billion a year to occupy my people, to detain my children, to drop bombs on Gaza, to have F-16s in our skies. The videos are not the only thing you should be paying attention to. I want you to read, and I keep emphasizing this every single day at every single event I'm at. You need to read. You need to tell your children to read. Social media is not the only outlet for reading. Don't get your information only from Twitter. Watch the videos, but go do the work. Go do the work. Go read about other struggles. Go do your research. Go remember, if you want to, again, strengthen your side, you do need to read the other sides, because you are able to see the brainwashing, the whitewashing of the narrative. Again, as a Palestinian woman, as a Syrian woman, Both of my countries have been funded for the oppression, for the displacement of my people. United States drops bombs, funds terrorists, funds the Assad regime in Syria. There is a foreign intervention in Syria that has not ended. We didn't ask for that. We didn't ask to be displaced. No one has, no one does. MPD is part of a program with the IOF.
What does
They
Iowa stand for?
cross-train
What does Iowa stand for?
Israeli Occupation Force. Don't call it the IDF. Don't call it the Israeli Defense Force. What are they defending? It is the Israeli Occupation Force. And they cross-train with a bunch of police departments, including MPD. Including MPD. And again, this country's treatment of black men, women, and children and people of color stems way back. But as you can see, the brutality tactics continue to get worse. You know why? Because terrorists are training terrorists. Call it what it is. It is terrorism. It is terrorism. It is terrorism. It is terrorism. Instead of funding terrorism, fund the schools in Southeast DC. Fund the schools in Northwest. Fund the schools in Southwest. Stop the fucking gentrification of, again, people of color and black people within this country, within our own fucking state. You're telling me you don't have the money when you send $3.8 billion? When you funded the war in Afghanistan, when you had troops in Afghanistan, when you displaced and terrorized Iraqis, when you were able to again create a red line for the Syrian dictator and never act upon it, and instead you just fired rockets into our own land. You're telling me you don't have the money? And we all know that they don't. We all know that they do, but that they don't want to admit it. And that's okay. You know why? Because we will never fucking be silent. We will never be silent. We won't. We won't. We won't. We won't. And you might be upset at the numbers that are here. I know damn well every time I used to come out for Syria, the numbers would just decrease with every year. We used to go from around 10,000 from our first year, 2011, to 8,000, 7,000, 6,000, 5,000, to literally 10 in March. There were around 10 to 15 people celebrating the Syrian anniversary of the revolution. But don't be discouraged. Don't be. Because of all of the Palestinian rallies I have been to recently, the diversity in the crowd, the solidarity from so many different backgrounds, religion, races, ethnicities. It is fucking amazing. We're changing the world. We are changing the world, and when they tell you that we're not, you continue to show up. You continue to show the fuck up. Because they don't want you to. They'll kill your revolutionaries. They'll assassinate your revolutionaries. They will assassinate your creatives. They will again imprison your artists, your rappers. They will set every single person up. They will again deny access to those that are incarcerated, to books, certain books within those libraries. Why? Because those books are fucking life-changing and they don't want them to have access. This country thrives off of terrorism, off white supremacy, off occupation. Call it what it is. Call it out. Don't be afraid to use the words. I remember I used to be so afraid to use the word terrorist. So afraid, even though that was what I was labeled since as long as I can remember. Call it what it is. White terrorism. White terrorism. Terrorism, period, point blank. Don't be afraid. You need to fight back. We need to fight back, and the only way we fight back is through organizing, through showing out. If every single one of you brought out at least 4 to 5 people, this crowd would have been so much bigger. Which is, again, it's okay that we don't have many numbers. But when we can't march through these streets and shut it down, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because again, why are we here? Why are we here? For freedom.
for justice for everybody. Liberation. Black liberation. All liberation. To wake the world the fuck up. And don't ever police the oppressed on how to fucking feel. Don't get angry at the oppressed for meeting face to face with officers. Don't tell me that you don't see what's going on. Don't tell me it's too complicated. Don't tell me that, again, I don't want to pick a side because both sides are causing ruckus. Both sides are to blame. Don't tell me that shit. Why? Because it's just simply not true. And I am so tired of being the spokesperson for all Palestinians. I'm so tired of having to educate everybody around me about my struggle. Having again to explain the difference between Israel and Palestine. Having to again prove my existence is valuable, is human. And I know a lot of people in this room can relate to that. Even just as a Muslim woman as well. You are constantly expected to apologize. As if you did something wrong. As if you're in contact with those terrorists when the United States government is the one that is in contact with those terrorists. The United States government is funding terrorism. And the last thing I want to leave you guys off with, please be careful when you are in these crowds. Because they will set you up. They will set you up. They will take videos of you. I got to repeat this at every single thing I've been to because they will take videos of you. They will edit the videos. They will again try to ruin your lives. But I know for a fact everybody here is risking their life to be here. If it's not our generation, it's the next. And if it's not the next, then it's the one after that. We won't give up on our children. We won't give up on our youth. Please fight for again the education system. Please fight for your brothers and sisters of all colors. And free Palestine, free my black people, free all the oppressed. We will never be silenced. Silence is violence. Thank you.
Stop Asian hate means free, free Palestine. Stop Asian hate means
Free, free Palestine!
Stop Asian hate means
Free, free Palestine!
We're coming towards the end, everybody. Please get on your feet. If you're able-bodied. If you're able-bodied. The system is working. It is not broken.
System is working, it is not broken!
The system is working. It is not broken.
The system is working, it is not broken!
The only solution is abolition.
The only solution is abolition!
Death, death to capitalism.
Death, death to capitalism!
I said death, death to capitalism.
Death, death to capitalism!
Death, death to white supremacy.
Death, death to white supremacy!
Build, build, build strong communities.
Build, build, build strong communities!
Build, build the world we want to see.
Build, build the world we want to see!
Stand, stand in solidarity.
Stand, stand in solidarity!
Abolition means creation.
Abolition means creation!
Stop Asian hate means black liberation.
Stop Asian hate means black liberation!
Stop Asian hate means black liberation.
Stop Asian hate means black liberation!
Stop Asian hate means black liberation.
Stop Asian hate means black liberation!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
You protect me and I'll protect you!
Disband the ALU. That shit right there.
My bad.
Nah, you good. You don't apologize for shit, you a black woman. You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
I said you protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU.
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
You protect me and I'll protect you.
Disband the ALU!
Disband hate means abolish the police. Stop Asian hate means no, I'm just saying. I mean, y'all can chant, but I'm just saying. Stop Asian hate means abolish the police.
Stop Asian hate means abolish the police.
Well, no, put on the next one. That's good. That's good. Everybody, I'd like to thank you all for coming here today. We're going to end this with something that we always end Black liberation direct actions on, and that is the asada. Share it with the class.
Okay. What's Gucci in that coochie, y'all? Hello. Next up.
Fight back.
As you are able, from your gut, from your soul.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love each other.
We must love each other.
And support each other.
And support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love each other.
We must love each other.
And support each other.
And support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Yes, let's get this second party started.
Check. Once again, thank you everybody for coming here today. One last time, I want to give a shout out to Anak Bayan DC. Let's hear it up for Anak Bayan. Let's hear it for Nakaset. Let's hear it for APIR. And let's hear it for the Total Liberation Collective. Our volunteers have flyers, everybody. If you want to support us, please go give us those organizations a follow. Donate, support our mutual aid efforts. As you go home, remember, abolition means creation, and stop Asian hate means Black liberation. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. All right, go home.
We just got finished with this incredible event, and you were one of the organizers. For those who weren't able to watch the whole thing, can you kind of give a summary of what this event was, how it came to be?
Yeah, for sure. Do you want me to wait for the...
Yeah, we'll edit it. It's okay. Let's say, yeah.
Yeah, so basically this event was to kind of carry forward the momentum that we saw addressing...
Actually, yeah. It's a little bit loud. Okay.
Yeah, so basically this event was intended to sort of carry forward the momentum we saw regarding addressing white supremacy following the mass shooting in Atlanta in March. And so we really wanted to emphasize solidarity in this event because we know that there has been at times a fraught history between Black and Asian communities in particular, but also that we recognize that the root causes of our oppression are the same, meaning that it is white supremacy, and an extension of that is U.S. imperialism. Specifically thinking about how U.S. imperialism and rhetoric around China during COVID was one of the root causes of a lot of the anti-Asian violence that we've seen over the past year that has really increased dramatically. But you know, we don't want to be here just calling attention to the violence that Asian folks face. We also recognize that it's really important to call attention to movements for liberation all over the world, and that includes Palestine, includes Colombia, includes India, includes Nigeria, and it includes us being here right here in DC, where DC MPD continues to murder people. Like just last year we saw Dion Kay and Karan Hilton murdered by MPD. And it's really important that, you know, when we're talking about solidarity, like I said, we're not just saying the word solidarity, we are actually showing up, like Asian folks are showing up for our Black comrades, whether that be through protesting, whether that be through mutual aid in our communities, whether that be through calling out anti-Blackness in our own communities. So we're really here to just like continue to build solidarity and like continue to bring the movement forward.
That's one thing that was really notable, I thought, about this event, was that it was very inclusive. And while, highlighting violence, police violence and other violence against Asian communities, in the same breath, also always was mentioned Palestine and, the murder of Black people and imperialism, and how those things go hand in hand. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss, is the white supremacy and capitalism. And I think a lot of people don't realize it. One other thing that I thought was noticeable and depressing was we're here in front of the White House. Let me kind of pan around. And so obviously a lot of tourists come by this area, and a lot of white people were walking right by, not even really paying attention, which for me, as a white journalist who reports on a lot of issues of social justice, I don't know. I sense that some things are changing, but from your perspective as an organizer, what do you see? What do you notice about kind of the attention paid from the average person to issues like this?
Yeah. Wait 1 second.
Sure.
Sorry, one of my favorite things. So, I mean, it's mixed, because I think that we have seen, we have seen solidarity, and we have seen. So, I mean, it's been mixed, but I think one concern is definitely like the longevity of movements, because when we held a vigil out here in DC in Chinatown in March following the shootings in Atlanta, we had a crowd of probably 300 people, and now you see we have like a much smaller crowd, and it's understandable that people's attention shifts with this sort of news cycle, but I think in order for us to have sustained movement, we have to continue to show up, and that means like continuing to show up for like Palestine, even though like there was a ceasefire that was called, like the movement still goes on, and also with protests around Black liberation, like we saw a huge drop off following last summer, even though there were people like here in DC, like Karan Hilton and Deontay, who were murdered by the police. But it's unfortunate to see oftentimes white liberals fail to continue to show up to things when an issue is hot. They're like, oh, like let me be out here, let me post this on Instagram. But as soon as there's any need for sustained movement, there's crickets. So I think a lot of that is what we have to be doing, is continuing to be out here and to honestly be making folks uncomfortable. Like, no, you can't just go get your photo op at the White House, not recognizing the fact that the occupant of the White House is still a racist, is still an imperialist, is still responsible for the deaths of our people in the U.S. and around the world. Just because Trump is out of office doesn't mean that everything is suddenly peachy. So we will continue to be out here, honestly. And we'll be continuing to call attention to these issues. And if it gets across to even one person who is walking by, then I see that as a win.
And so on that topic, what would you say to people, especially maybe liberals, fans of Biden, who are confused by the calls to action to dismantle or to defund the police, to get rid of the Asian liaison unit for MPD, and the fact that the new bill for the anti-hate crimes bill, that's not satisfactory. So what would you say to those people who aren't sure why that is not the case, like why that's not okay?
To go to your local bar and start talking about abolition really loudly.
really loud.
So, yeah, I mean, if liberals are confused about why we don't think that Biden is solving our problems or why something like the Stop Asian Hate bill isn't solving our problems, I'm equally as confused as them, because what we see is that this is just lip service. The COVID-19 hate crimes bill is simply lip service. It doesn't do anything to actually address the root cause of anti-Asian violence. What it does is give more funding to the police. And as many of our speakers highlighted, the police don't actually keep us safe. There are police all over DC, there are police all over Atlanta. They did not stop the shooting in Atlanta, and in fact, many of them stood around while victims of the Atlanta shooting were dying. And so if they are not, if the police are not keeping us safe, why do we think that having more of them is going to keep us safe? It doesn't make any sense. And as I mentioned in my speech, the police kill Asian folks just like they kill black folks, just like they kill brown folks. And so if we're trying to address violence in our communities, we have seen time and again that giving more funding to the police, having liaison units like the Asian liaison unit doesn't actually do anything. We did research on the Asian liaison unit
Is there anger coming out like
didn't
your
find
sweet
any
pancakes?
instances
Are
where
you
they
angry?
actually prevented instances of anti-Asian violence. All they do is sort of walk around Asian neighborhoods, go into Asian businesses, and then what? Like, what are they actually doing? And giving them more funding just means that there are more cops on the street, more police to stop someone, to harass them, and possibly kill them. So we don't need that. And our communities agree that we don't need police to keep us safe.
What would you say to people who are maybe sitting at home, aren't sure what to do, aren't sure if their voices can make a difference, aren't sure if their feet on the ground at these protests like this could make a difference? What would you say to folks who are watching?
Honestly, if there's anything that I've seen from the past year, and that includes being out here in the streets of DC when hundreds and thousands of Nazis showed up to town, it's that every single person being out here makes a difference. Because when you have one person and you bring someone, you are having another body there, and the more bodies you have, the safer you are. And we saw last summer how powerful a group and a movement can be when you have a large number of people. So even if you're not sure, if you care, and you should care, we've been begging you to care, you need to be out here, especially if you're privileged, especially if you're white, because the fact is, you are probably not going to be the ones who are going to be facing violence from the police the most. You have privilege. And so it is honestly your duty as a white person to be out here. If you claim to care about your community, to be here and to be here with your presence to protect the black and brown folks in your community.
Any last parting words you want to leave people with?
No, not really. I'm good.
Yeah, I know you've been out here. If folks don't realize it, was so hot out here in DC. You've been standing out here for hours. This was a really inspiring event, judging by the crowd. So thank you so much for your time. We are here right after an incredible event here in DC, and you were one of the speakers. For the folks who weren't able to catch this event, can you kind of give a summary of your experience, your life experience that kind of brought you here as one of the speakers?
Well, just being, Asian, first generation Asian American, I've always grew up, being teased and bullied because I didn't look like majority of my peers. My eyes, were smaller than the average, person that was around me. Going to school in a predominantly white schools, it's, people looked at you as if you didn't belong. Down to the language that we speak at home. It just makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, but there's nothing wrong with you. I know there's something wrong with me, and it's taken a lot of healing.
We'll edit this part out. Let me detach this so I can put it closer to just the mic.
Yeah, because we have our mask on too.
Yeah. Oh no, it's gonna get louder.
If you want to move,
Yeah.
like back here, maybe?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just the music.
She's following you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just hold it up closer to you. Or you can hold it, whatever. Yeah.
So yeah, like, you know, it just made me feel like I didn't belong, and I didn't know why. There's no real reason as to why I was being made fun of for how I talk, how I look, down to the food I eat. You know, I specifically remember I used to bring my lunch. You know, my mom used to cook and make homemade meals, and I used to bring it to lunch, and I stopped. I stopped doing that because people will always ask me, what does that smell, or why does it smell like that, what does it look like that, and it's just like, it's very harmful, especially at a young age, having to grow up being oppressed and having to unlearn certain patterns, and even just like, you know, breaking generational curses and having those conversations with my parents, you know, because they were brainwashed, you know, by the white supremacy mindset and mentality that this country is built on. You know, having to fight against, you know, my own parents to have them understand that that's not okay. I mean, who would want to, as a child, you know, want to argue with their parents, the people that gave them life and brought them here? So just, you know, my feelings around that has always, it's always been instilled in me, and at my big age now, as an adult, it's just, like I said, having to unlearn, having to reprogram my own mentality, and to find a place in this world where I feel like I belong, and not having to second think that, or to have anyone's opinion affect me. It's hard to break down those shields and break down my own walls, just to break the uncomfortability that was given to me growing up. And it's hard putting it into words, it's hard articulating it, because all you can do is just feel, and no matter what, it's just, that feeling will always be instilled in me, and no matter how much healing I do from it would always lead back to the trauma, because unless we all come together, unless we continue to fight white supremacy, fight the oppression, fight for everybody throughout, have global liberation, the feeling will never ever go away. And yeah.
After everything that you've personally experienced and everything that you've seen, all of the hate you've seen directed towards the Asian community, you know, including very recently murders, including police murders of Asians. Was it recently that you became an outspoken activist, or did it take you some time to get to that point? What was your kind of a progression towards this place?
Honestly, my anger started a few years ago, and it was before the world started marching. It was before the world started to wake up. I remember, you know, just being angry back in 2016, back in 2015, you know, with the Black lives being, you know, taken away by police brutality, you know, the murders are being caught and being recorded. I remember just being angry, and all I can do is just try to spread awareness on social media. And last year was when I came out during the George Floyd protest, and I started marching, and I started coming together with my community, the Black community, and standing in solidarity, because it's just not right. we have to show up. Staying on social media is not, it helps, but that's not the only way to fight this fight. And that's when I felt called to come out here. And that's how my progression started. It hasn't just recently started with the murders of my own people. This goes back years when I was just learning how to be an adult. And when the world started waking up, and even then, between 2016 and now, just to see how much people have started showing up, have come out, the support and the communities coming together, it's very empowering, because there is power in numbers, and as we continue to come together, we will all be free. Black people will be free. Palestine will be free. Asian people will be free. There will be no more white supremacy as long as we continue coming together and fighting.
Do you worry at all that people will start to get complacent with Joe Biden being in office, with the anti-hate crime bill, and even with the MPD having the so-called Asian liaison units that they have? Some people might say, oh, that seems to be good. That seems to be a good step. Will people kind of go back to sleep and think that that's enough? That now that Trump is out of office, that's going to be enough?
It will only remain complacent if we don't continue fighting. People get comfortable, just like my fellow comrades as they were speaking. There's outrage for a week. There's all these posts, and then it dies down. It's our duty, it's our job to make sure that the noise, our voices are not silenced, that we continue to raise our voices, to continue to express our outrage and show up and fight. If we stop and we continue to get brainwashed by this mentality that our oppressor is trying to spill into us or onto us, that's when we become complacent. That's when we get comfortable, and we can't get comfortable because we are still not free. Palestine is not free. Black people are still not free. There's still lives being taken by police, the people who are supposed to protect and serve us, but who are they really protecting and serving? So the only way to not let it be complacent or stay complacent, or it's not let people get comfortable. We gotta, like we said, we gotta educate people. We gotta read. We gotta learn from each other. We gotta continue fighting. We just can't get comfortable. We can't.
Is there anything else that you want people to know who are sitting at home and don't know what they could do to help?
Reach out to your local organizations. We are all on social media again. If you're on social media, there is a way you can reach out or find help or ways to help. There's a lot of articles. Follow independent journalists. Don't pay attention to what's being portrayed in the news, because all that is censored, to either the left side or the right side. You just have to talk to people. Don't be afraid to speak up. Silence is violence. So if you want to help, there's a lot of different ways you can help. You can ask somebody that will know somebody that will lead you to be able to help, to be able to support. Mutual aid can be done in so many different ways, and you just have to take that initiative, take that step to do something. You continue sitting down, it's not going to do anything. You're not reaching out and asking questions or even trying, it's not going to do anything. Do the work, put in the work. I promise you'll be able to find ways to help.
Thank you so much for your time. That was great.
Thank you so much, Jen.
So we have just finished here with, well, I'm going to start over. Total Liberation. We have just finished here with a protest organized by Total Liberation Committee, TLC. And it was a really interesting protest coming together of Asian communities, Black communities, and Palestinian. And here we have Mimi, who gave a really, really impassioned and powerful speech. So I know that you are completely exhausted, and it's been a very, very long several days for you. I know I don't want to even ask you how you're feeling, because I know it's got to be a very complicated question. And we here at Status Coup have been reporting very heavily on what is going on against Palestinians. I guess I'll start by asking you how it's been for you here in DC among these other organizers, how you feel in this community as of right now with these other people who are fighting with you.
I think it's been amazing. Again, to see so much solidarity between our communities and our organizers is something that I haven't seen. It is something that is very, very new to me. To see it again be this prevalent, to be this common now, for the numbers to have grown, to again see even just more than just individual connections, as you said, organization connections, grassroots connections. I think again it gives me hope for humanity, and it gives me a lot of hope for, again, liberation for all of us, from the oppressed, for the oppressed, from our oppressors. And it makes me feel like, again, I can wake up without doubting that one day we will be free.
One thing that you mentioned during your speech is that it doesn't matter whether there are, 10,000 people in a space fighting with you or 10 people in a space fighting with you. What matters is what? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you can share that again.
So I'm half Palestinian and I'm half Syrian. So again, as a lot of people know, the Syrian Revolution, or not a lot of people, but the Syrian Revolution began in 2011 against the Assad regime, against his tyranny, and again the oppression that he has forced onto our people, that his father has forced onto our people since the 1980s, massacred and displaced millions of us. And again, that was one of the reasons why I mentioned that it doesn't matter if you have 10,000 people or only 10 people on your side. It matters that the voices are strong and powerful, and that the people that are part of, again, these protests, these workshops, these rallies, are dedicated individuals to continue making a change even behind the scenes. And what I found is that numbers, while they do matter in the grand scheme of things to media, in between these connections that we form, we do reach more people when it is a tighter-knit community. And I say that because the connections that I've made through smaller protests have been far more, again, long-lasting than protests with thousands of people. And it's great to see people show up for Palestine, to see people show up for Black Lives Matter, for Syria. But I do want to emphasize that it should never discourage organizers or people of movements, or again, any of the oppressed, to see fewer faces, only because, again, we all have the power to change the world, even if it's just one person. It is, again, the quality of the voices that are being heard, because you will have a lot of individuals show up and then never do the work. You will have individuals show up, take a bunch of pictures, and then dip out. They won't work behind the scenes. And I find that very harmful for our movement, because it goes to show that, again, a lot of people will normalize, and not even just that, but encourage that you just need to show up to protest and do nothing else, which, again, as I said, causes a lot of division and a lot more of a lot less expectations as to how our movements will progress, because a lot of people, when they see other people only doing something else, groupthink, conformity, you'll see all of it. So again, a lot of human beings are functioned again to just conform to the way of life for others. So the more that people see that, again, behind the scenes, that people are organizing, that again there are opportunities that are said within these protests. People go on their phones, follow these groups, press the link to volunteer. That all leads to change. And I feel like when it is a smaller group of people, of individuals, they have a lot of power to, again, be passionate and dedicated, because you can't reach an entire crowd of people that is in the thousands. And like I said, thousands of people is very important for showing out. But just because you have a small group does not mean you're not making a difference.
On another line of thought is, and I know you've been speaking so much and talking so much, so I'm sure your voice is just gone. But one of the things that's been so frustrating for me as a journalist, and so I'm sure that means it's 100 times more frustrating for you as a Palestinian, is the propaganda that comes out of Israel, and therefore the propaganda that is repeated by MSNBC, by CNN, by Fox, of course. For example, after the so-called ceasefire, when Palestinians were celebrating at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, they of course cleared them out with tear gas and projectiles, etc. But an official Israel account posted, we allow all faiths to celebrate here, literally posting so-called happy worshipers literally at the same time that they were violently ejecting folks and beating a CNN producer. And so CNN, of course, did not report that they were beating their producer, and did not report that was a literal lie. So I guess all that is to say that you are up against a lot. There are so many lies out there. And for me, as an independent journalist who seeks to always present the truth and always, present the side of justice, how do people fight this? I mean, you are fighting for your people, and there are folks out there who want to know the truth. So what in your opinion is to be done about this slew of misinformation?
Independent journalists. Independent journalists is my answer. Because again, simply even journalism, the field is not funded as much as it should be. Again, journalists really do not make jack. If I'm being honest, they don't make enough.
I can confirm.
Yep. And again, you have independent journalists who come out here who are reporting the truth. Because a lot of people don't trust media outlets. You will see people in different political spectrums both criticizing, again, all of the media outlets, being like, when it comes to this, I don't trust this. When it comes to this, I don't trust that. And so again, independent journalists bring on ground information. They bring real, raw, genuine information. And again, footage. You interview people who aren't scripted. You know what I'm saying? And so again, when you have independent journalists, when you have creatives, when you have, again, different art groups, when you have different movements advocating for Palestinians, spreading out the truth, spreading out the messages, because social media has made a change. I will say again, videography, footage, filmmaking, a lot of that has really made a very big difference within our movements, again, within the Palestinian liberation movement, within Black Lives Matter movement. It's really amazing what videos can do. I would say again, people in Gaza have been taking videos, sending them over of the bombs dropping, videos of babies with legitimate bullets in their arms, videos of young women and men with blown up legs, blown up arms, rubber bullets. you'll see children crying over their father or their mother's dead body, their brother's dead body. That is all very raw footage. It's not, again, they try to censor it, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. But as more people post, the less likely they can just keep censoring every single person that's posting. And so I feel like, again, despite the media outlets, the very big media outlets not wanting to report the truth because, again, they don't want to risk their funding when that is what journalism is all about. It is about reporting the truth. It is about refusing, again, to report nonsense and, again, not report about the truth, because journalism holds such a strong power within this country. Such a strong power. And again, until we continue, until we call it out for what it is.
The 500 bikes are coming this way. We should probably move.
Oh, okay.
Until we call it out for what it is, for, again, Zionism holding such a strong power in this country that media outlets can't even report without being called anti-Semitic, we won't get anywhere. We need to keep pushing this narrative. And I'm actually very, very tired about saying that anti-Zionism does not equate to anti-Semitism.
Right.
Because it should already be just, what is the word? Common sense. It should already be just given, because that is Muslims, Christians, Jews, Palestinians. We've all lived peacefully. It is, again, like when we talk about apartheid, when we talk about Israel being a terrorist state, an occupation force, their military defense force being an occupation force, when we talk about these things, we're bringing up the fact that, again, when you have one side with nuclear warfare, with nuclear weapons, and then another side that just has tanks, that doesn't even have tanks, sorry. They only have rocks. They have rockets that don't even fire and make it past, again, outside of Gaza. When you see that, when you talk about that, again, people will try to spin that narrative to, again, only blame one side that isn't even equipped enough to defend itself. Because if Palestine, if Gaza had the warfare, the armor, the artillery to actually make impact on Israel wouldn't be firing or dropping bombs on Gaza.
Right, and that's the thing. Israel is able to very clearly target their artillery. They have their dome, and it's a lot of propaganda, including the fact that they bombed the building the Associated Press and Al Jazeera were housed out of in Gaza, and then the Associated Press turned around and fired a Jewish reporter for having supported Palestinians in college, which was ridiculous. On the topic of journalists, a friend and colleague, Abby Martin, made a wonderful documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom. And so I wanted to bring up part of a really striking part of that documentary is not just, when Israel is attacking Gaza, but also the day-to-day for those in Gaza, where there's not clean water, where there's so much disease through the water because Israel doesn't allow them the parts for the infrastructure to rebuild what they need, and the food rations where they're forced to eat like spices and not, it's not food that is healthy. It's not even really able to be considered food in many cases, and now it's even worse where they've bombed out purposely. Israel has bombed out purposely a lot of the other infrastructure. So do you fear that now that there's this so-called ceasefire, that people will forget about the day-to-day of those who live in Gaza?
People already have. And that is why we will continue to storm the streets. That is why we will continue to fight. That is why we are here. That is why we're forming. Again, we have this solidarity. We have these alliances. Because the same with, again, other oppressed groups here within the United States and outside of the United States, a very common theme for the media to, again, take this narrative that the oppressors are stopping their oppression. The occupiers have decided they are no longer going to occupy. nobody focuses on the day-to-day lives of Palestinians, even within the West Bank. Even within the West Bank. Again, you can't walk from your home to even a market without being stopped. Checkpoints, hours and hours of being stopped at checkpoints, of being, again, intimidated with these, not even rifles, but again, their weapons are brutal. And even the tactics that they use, their terrorist tactics that they use, continue to get more and more brutal. And people will continue to, again, justify the killings and murders of Palestinians. They will continue to call Israel what it is, an apartheid state. They will continue to justify their terrorism. There have been reports that as for the mental health of the children in Gaza, the rates of PTSD are so high and so different than any other place that now it's not even post-traumatic stress disorder, it's traumatic stress disorder, because it is ongoing. It is every day, it is every single day. These children are our future. You know, we have, again, a generation of us right now who right here in America, we've been privileged enough to get into residencies, into medical programs, and to, again, make a difference in different, again, like, systems. But the children in Gaza, even just all around the oppressed communities, even here in DC, they have the access to basic resources such as books taken away. So when you take away the right to education, the right to reading, the right to stimulating the brain of knowledge, you are again restraining a human being from the simplest form of experience, of reading other people's stories, of other people's experiences. You're refraining children, even just older men and women, of feeling human, as if, again, they're able to read. And one of the most important things I think I've heard is that within the school systems here, you have to, when you're younger, you have to fill out like these papers where like your parents sign off on a book that you read that week. And so you see here the importance of reading, of libraries, of now audiobooks.
Yeah, it did. It was moving.
And it's heartbreaking because we don't see any media or anyone covering the fact that there are libraries being bombed, that the people in Gaza and Palestine don't have access to books. And again, even going to universities, you got to go all the way to Tel Aviv. It's simple human rights, it's simple resources, and I'm very tired of people saying it's complicated, because it's not. How is a child a terrorist? How are people defending themselves terrorists? Second Amendment talks about self-defense. Breonna Taylor was shot in her own home for defending herself, for, again, the cops simply applying the Second Amendment to when it comes to white folk. Kyle Rittenhouse was able to storm the streets, and again with his rifle, nothing happened to him. Dylan Ruff shot up a bunch of people in black shirt, taken to Burger King after, high-fived by officers. Nothing happens to them. That is why we talk about white supremacy. Again, that is why we talk about European white descent supremacy. And again, without reading, without these basic accesses, with libraries being bombed, these children are growing up without a place to lose themselves, to distract themselves. They can't distract themselves with anything. They don't have electricity, they don't have internet. If they do have internet, it's very, very slow. So again, we're losing a generation of children, and until we wake the fuck up and we wake people up, will we ever see a generation that follows ours, the passion and dedication that we have.
Is there anything else that you want people to know who feel underinformed, or maybe who feel touched for the first time, maybe are paying attention for the first time, and want to take action, or want to know what to do next to help?
I say join movements. Do your research. Don't just listen to your white history textbooks. Stop following major media sources. Follow independent journalists. Look at the narrative that they're spewing. Look at, again, what content that they are creating Look at who they're covering. Look at the people. The credibility of the people that they are interviewing, that they are talking to, the words that they use. Look at, again, real life stories of Palestinians and their day-to-day lives. See the difference. Use your voice to voice for the voiceless. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much.